In tabletop role-playing games, the stakes are usually too high for the players to accept and fear the chance of failure. For a while, new players will find the permadeath aspect daunting, but in time, even that becomes routine. After all, if a character dies, you just have to make a new one, right? If you're an evil GM like me, this is rather frustrating. After all, we don't really want to kill player characters since that releases the tension rather than builds it. But on the other hand, if potential character death is the only source of tension, then we need to let the players know it's not an empty threat. Luckily, I have found a fun solution, albeit one you shouldn't overuse. For some reason, a high-stakes gambling session really works well. There are a few key ingredients that must be included if this is going to work. Number 1. While the game can include an element of luck, it must be mostly skill-based so that the players feel it is within their power to win. Number 2. The rules must be simple enough to understand even for people who have never played it before, but deep enough for some strategy. Number 3. The stakes must be high but not death or totally crippling a character. Good threats to levy on the players are a mandatory quest, servitude from which the players will surely escape in dramatic fashion, signing of a magic pact, relinquishing of magic items, their immortal soul after death, or all of their money. What the players will really care about, however, is the humiliation of losing. Number 4. The villains should be either lawful or neutral evil. It's okay to have a cheating villain if the players can find out about it beforehand and counteract it, especially if the players can invent a clever way to cheat back. Mostly though, the villains need to be ruthless, law-abiding, and utterly delighting in the misery and destruction of the players. If you want to watch a great show about lawful evil villains, watch the anime Kaiji Ultimate Survivor. Okay, so you get the idea. Now if you really want to spice things up, play some music in the background and switch it to a more stressful track whenever you reach a tense moment. If you want to really blindside the players, invent your own little gambling minigame. To get you started, here is a devilishly evil minigame I invented to psychologically torment my players, called Zawa's Snakes and Ladders.
Knowing the stupidity of mortals, the devil casino owner, Zawazawa, took the popular children's game Snakes and Ladders,
In America you call it Chutes and Ladders,
and modified it.
In regular Snakes and Ladders, you start here at the bottom of the board, and each turn you roll a 6-sided dice. Your token moves a number of spaces equal to that number. If you land on the bottom of a ladder, you automatically move to the top of the ladder. If you land on the head of a snake, you automatically move to the tail of the snake. You just roll over and over, taking as many turns as you need to win. Zawa's Snakes and Ladders is almost identical except 3 key changes. Firstly, the player doesn't roll for movement, they choose how many spaces they want to move up to a maximum of 6. Kinda like if you could just choose what number the dice rolls. Secondly, instead of having as many turns as they want to reach the top, they only have 30 turns. The third and final change is that there is another player, the House, who has a pack of 6 cards with the numbers 1 to 6 on them. Before the player makes their move, the House puts one of these cards on the table, face down. After the player has committed to their movement, the card is turned over. If the House's card is the same number as the distance the player chooses to move, the House gets to change the player's movement to a space of the House's choosing, limited by the same 6-space range the player had to choose from. In short, the game is an asymmetrical psychological contest between the players and the House, where the player must move quickly up the board to reach the top, but unpredictably enough that the House cannot guess their movement. The game is particularly tense when there is the head of a snake within the 6-square movement range, as this can spell disaster for the player if they get caught out. Of course, the secret of the game is that while it looks only slightly mathematically weighted against the player, it is actually greatly in favor of the House. In theory, the player only needs to move an average of 3.5 spaces per turn to reach the top in time, giving them a bit of leeway for unpredictable movement, especially if they land on a ladder. However, this is an illusion. The House only needs to send the player down 1 or 2 snakes to make the game practically unwinnable for the player, while easily protecting the ladders. I have tested this game on 3 players, and only one of them got close to winning, but failed at the last moment. Of course, I would have been just as happy if they had won. The objective wasn't to make them win or lose, but to generate dramatic tension. All 3 players reported that the game was very stressful, which made me very, very happy. If you want to make it a bit fairer, you could crank up the turn limit. Basically, if your players are too relaxed, even during life or death battles, try pulling them out of their comfort zone, into a contest where their character stats cannot save them. Anyway, that's all I had to say about using high-stakes gambling minigames to drive your players insane. Bye-bye now.